balanced image needs to always come from a school of thought. The balanced image doesn't just appear. There needs to be a balanced mufti, a balanced fatwa council, a balanced society. And balance usually requires awareness. You can't expect from a radical society to be balanced.
Yeah, I agree.
So once you see a society that understands the interests of itself, of its nation, of the region, and prioritizes, I'm going to give you an example, sending a rocket to Mars and not sending a rocket to your neighbor. This priority.
Yeah.
Believe me, the budget that goes to starting wars is much more than it is for research. So once you prioritize, you want to be the first Arab country to take Arabs and Muslims to the moon and Mars and to space.
Welcome back on Trending Echoes, where we delve into compelling topics that resonates with our world. In today's episode, we will be discussing the role of the cleric in confronting extremism. A special guest will be joining us today, Imam Tawhidi, a peace advocate. He will be shedding light to how the terms resistance and terrorism are mixed up in the minds of the public, despite the clear distinction between them in the teaching of Islam and international law. Also, how it is like to live in a Western society as a Muslim. He will be moving on to the practical steps that can be provided to dismantle political Islam and the role of Imam in mosques in Western cities. We will conclude with a message for the youth and the future generation. Stay tuned for this enlightening episode. Welcome to another enlightening episode of Trending Echoes from Trends Research and Advisory, where we delve into compelling topics that resonate with the pulse of our world. With you is Nasr Al-Ali from Trends. Today we have a distinguished guest, Imam Tawhidi, who is also known as the Imam of Peace. Imam is an Australian Muslim scholar and one of the main leading voices in the global movement of Islamic reform. He will be joining us to explore the profound connection between peace and Islam. Stay tuned for insights that echo beyond boundaries on this journey towards understanding peace and the factor of Islam. Imam, I welcome you here at Trends. It's very honor and pleasure to have you here with us at Trends.
The honor is mine. Thank you very much, Brother Nasser.
Thank you, Imam. Imam, I'd like to start off with my first question, if you don't mind. The terms resistance and terrorism are mixed up in the minds of the public, despite the clear distinction between them in the techniques and the teaching of Islam and international law. How can be these distinction between the two factors facilitated for the public?
I think the challenge here is that there has never been an agreed upon definition for the word terrorism. Okay. The United Nations has struggled to define what terrorism is. Several institutes, think tanks, universities, dictionaries have tried to put forward a definition of terrorism. What exactly is it? Is it seeking political means through violence, through terrorizing civilians? Is it through terrorizing governments, government agencies only? And many times we see that these definitions are taken from a individual's theory on terrorism. So you'll have a very prominent scholar who has put down a theory on what terrorism is. For example, Michael Rappaport. He speaks about his waves of terrorism. And people try to derive the definition from an individual's theory. If you come to the Middle East, a region that has suffered from terrorist groups the most, the definition sort of varies from one country to another. And sometimes in one country, it could vary, meaning that the laws that someone gets charged by under the laws of countering terrorism could allow someone to get away with an act in one part of the country, in another part of the country, he could be charged with terrorism. So I think we need to settle on what the definition of terrorism is. Here is where the real challenge is. When you have a extremist terrorist organization telling you they don't care that they're terrorists, and then you have some academic institutions in the West that say, no, they're just misunderstood. They're not serious. They're not really terrorists.
Or it's an individual act.
Yeah, lone wolf and so on. So I think to begin with, we need to define the problem, and then we move ahead by classifying it. As far as resistance is concerned, resistance gives you the context of defense.
Yeah.
That you are resisting a form of terrorism. And the resistance of terrorism is the job of the army.
Yeah.
It's the job of the police.
Exactly.
That's not the job of militias, for example.
Yeah.
You can't be a militia that resists the law.
Exactly. Yeah. Imam Tawhidi, since you grew up and lived in the West, can you share with us some of the challenges facing as a Muslim child or a Muslim family in the West? And how can we protect it from extremist tendencies?
This question is going to require a personal response, because I grew up as a child in the West before 9/11.
Yeah.
And I continued to grow after 9/11, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to the Middle East and I returned to the West as now an imam and a leader of a Muslim community who deals a lot with the West and Western organizations. Therefore, the experiences have varied, and I've learned a lot from each stage, and I've applied it to another stage. Before 9/11 and after 9/11, we need to be very frank. There is always equality in the West. There is a law that protects you, regardless of whether 9/11 happened or not. You are afforded the basic fundamental human rights, and we never really had a problem as far as oppression by the state goes. We had an issue with racism on the streets.
Yeah.
And not just us, even our Sikh brothers who wear the turban, they get accused of being
Muslim.
And Islamist even. So I think the issue is that people are not aware of who they are or what they are looking at and who this person is and what they stand for. So let me give you a personal example. Yeah. I have to do twice as much work as any other imam I know.
And why is that?
Yeah, because one, I have a message.
Yeah.
I go into, let's say, a parliamentary hearing or Senate hearing, and I have my message. And then I have to defend myself that this turban is not like Baghdadi. I'm a different guy. I'm different than that imam. And this is why the name Imam of Peace. Because immediately you are put in a box.
Yeah.
This is who I am. I'm not violent. I'm not intolerant. There's nothing that I want that is against peace. I want to live my life in peace. Want everyone around me to live in peace. And it's sad, really, because you live in a time where if you don't put yourself in a box, someone will put you in a box. They'll classify you. Are you right wing or left wing?
Yeah. If
Are
you
you
don't
anti?
pick, they'll pick for you.
So I didn't pick it, but I was called an Imam of Peace, and I said, you know what? This is valuable. This name is valuable. And for a strategic thinker, you can utilize it to strengthen your message.
Yeah. That's an interesting story, Imam. Do you believe, in your opinion, Imam, and let's be here frank, do you really believe that there are practical steps that can be provided to dismantle political Islam?
Political Islam is a terminology that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
In reality, there is no such thing as political Islam. Islam is Islam. Its politics is within it.
Yeah.
Let me go even deeper. Politics, the definition of politics, whether it be textbook definition or practical definition, is this: to achieve one's goals in the service of his or her country or office by all means necessary. That is politics. That's why people in the West don't trust politicians. So to achieve a goal by any means necessary, this in itself goes against the value of Islam.
Exactly.
Because the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, the highest level of governance and the best level of governance comes from the Prophet, and he never had a government.
Yeah, exactly. He only had the shura and
he had this committee.
Yeah.
And there was no economy. There was Baytul Mal.
Yeah.
The treasury, which was emptied every night. There would not be a poor person, and the Prophet is around. He would give to the poor people, and it would, if anything remained, it would be very basic. And there was no army. The main wings of a government is a head of state, economy, and a military. The Muslims themselves would volunteer to defend. So to say that the Prophet had a government is reducing him down to like Nelson Mandela, for example.
Yeah.
No, the Prophet is much higher than that. The Prophet is much higher. But what we learn from the Prophet is how to govern. How we govern ourselves and how we govern our governments. And you see that the Prophet always took into consideration the interest of the other side. Never once did he say, go into the area and work against them.
Yeah.
And in dialogue and negotiation, even with the enemy.
Yeah.
He always made sure that their interests and their rights were protected. Because if a right is protected, the interest is by default protected. So political Islam does not exist. What exists is Islamism. And Islamism is a terminology that refers to the ideology of using Islam for political gain. That's what exists. We have Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood. This is very important. Why? Because you look at, for example, Sunni Islam, Shi'i Islam. These are Islamic denominations, schools of thought. These are madaris, madahib.
Yeah.
Political Islam is not a madhab. It can only be an organization like the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Muslim Brotherhood is not a Sunni madhab. It's a Islamist organization that uses Sunni Islam for its political gain. Here's the distinction.
How can we deal with them though?
The Muslim Brotherhood are, in my opinion, the easiest organization to deal with, in my opinion. The question is finding the people willing to deal with them. The UAE dealt with them in the best appropriate manner. A designation, an isolation from society. Now we're living in peace. The West will say, but they have a right to preach. They have a right to run for Congress. They have the right to campaign. They have the right to say, we want caliphate.
Yeah.
So eventually, democracy will destroy democracy. Democracy will bring an end to democracy if it continues in this manner. If you look at, and again, I have to give this example. If you look at the situation of the royal monarchies and the royal rule in the Muslim countries, you have the ruler, the president, and he's responsible. There's no such thing as, let's oppose him.
Exactly.
Let's bring this party down.
Yeah.
The other issue is the Muslim Brotherhood does not think in 4-year terms. They think in 100-year terms. And when you have a monarchy that's here, it's not going anywhere in 4 years, you can tackle it. In the West, they think in 4-year terms. The Republicans think in 4-year terms. Election in 4 years.
Yeah.
So first year, they're getting settled. Second year and third year, they're doing what they can. And fourth year, they are busy with trying to get re-elected. So here's the real issue. To tackle the Muslim Brotherhood, you need willingness, because they are not. Hizb al-Tahrir is more hidden. The Muslim Brotherhood is more open.
Yeah.
In some areas, Hizb al-Tahrir is more open. I know that. People will listen to this and say, but hang on, they're very frank here. Yeah. But the Muslim Brotherhood will actually run for elections and register organizations legally. Hizb al-Tahrir will not register organizations legally, and they will not run for elections because they do not believe in the Western system. So we went from seeing Muslim Brotherhood members with very messy, thick beards, dirty, to now wearing Armani, Gucci, what's going on? A total shift in appearance.
They have developed.
Indeed. It's like, what's Darwin's theory? Evolution.
Evolution theory.
Right? They went from really looking like that to looking more civilized. Why? It was a tactic to begin with. There was always a tactic. So I think to deal with them, you need to first understand that this threat is real. The Muslim Brotherhood threat is a real threat. The same way ISIS is a real thing, they're also real in this manner. That's why they're on the same designated list.
Yeah, exactly. Considering the increasing nationalist and extremist tendencies, how can the minds of Muslims be protected from such tendencies to promote a balanced image of Islam?
The balanced image needs to always come from a school of thought. The balanced image doesn't just appear. There needs to be a balanced mufti, a balanced fatwa council, a balanced society. And balance usually requires awareness. You can't expect from a radical society to be balanced.
Yeah, I agree.
So once you see a society that understands the interests of itself, of its nation, of the region, and prioritizes, I'm going to give you an example, sending a rocket to Mars and not sending a rocket to your neighbor. This priority.
Yeah.
Believe me, the budget that goes to starting wars is much more than it is for research. So once you prioritize, you want to be the first Arab country to take Arabs and Muslims to the moon and Mars and to space. This vision cannot come from a backward society. So clearly this society has reached a stage where they've achieved everything that they wanted to achieve. And now they're going above and beyond even some of the superpowers. So a balanced form of Islam is really just being the best Muslim you can be.
Exactly.
Because when talking about Muslim interfaith relations, people get surprised. Really, you managed to get an imam to come to an interfaith event? Why is it a surprise? Why is it a surprise?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Prophet, he was given so many names. His main name that's in the Holy Quran, Rahmatan lil Alameen, mercy to the worlds, plural.
Yeah.
To the humans, to the animals, to the plants, to the jinn, to every world that exists. He's a mercy. So why is it a surprise if a Muslim shows up to an interfaith event? If an imam attends? No, we have a religion of genuine peace. And we don't just say that. Why? Why are we a religion of? Because everything that comes from God is peace.
Yeah.
Everything that comes from God has to be peaceful. God does not send down terrorism.
Exactly.
If you see terrorism, it is the human being who interpreted God's teachings in their own way for their own benefits. This is when Satan comes in.
Yeah. And I think here is also the role of media. I think media is always trying to convince people and then just try to mislead them for sometimes hidden agenda. Since Imam, you mentioned awareness and for example, education. Do you think that academic and educational qualification through official institutions are major factors in the formation of a cleric?
I graduated from the Islamic seminary.
Yeah.
I hold 2 academic qualifications.
MashaAllah.
And I'm going now for higher qualifications. I'll tell you this, an academic qualification does not make someone an imam, does not make you a cleric.
Not even a religious qualification? Like Islamic studies, for example, is it necessarily like to know Quran, for example, to study hadith, for example?
What makes someone a cleric is studying Islam from its sources, studying the Quran and its interpretation, studying the hadith and its sciences, studying the ahkam of Sharia, fiqh, and their istidlal, the resolution behind it, how we got this law, and knowing how Islam functions, understanding Islamic history. This requires study in al-madaris al-Islamiyya, Islamic institutions, which the academic world will tell you we don't accept it. You have to receive an ijazah from a higher Islamic authority to be able to lead people in prayer. You have to receive a permit from the governing community authority before you can teach people about Islam. You have to be ordained. You have to be ordained by a mujtahid, by a senior jurist, before you can be considered a sheikh. You have to be licensed. Harvard will say, if you get a bachelor's degree from me, it's enough. You can go and preach to the Muslims. That's not going to work. What academic institutions do, they summarize and specialize in a certain area of Islam. For example, you can take a master's degree in Islamic studies. You'll learn about the Ottoman Empire, a bit about the Arabic language. You'll learn about the ethics of Islam. But if you put the Quran in front of the person, he will not know where to begin. So having an academic institution give you a certificate, you can bring the biggest professor of Harvard and Oxford in Islamic studies. They're not equal to the Grand Mufti. They're not equal to the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. And the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar does not have qualification from Oxford, but he's higher than Oxford. And they're whole Islamic institutions. So we're talking about two different worlds here, two different levels of study. And in reality, there is a sacred element behind learning Islam from a mosque, learning Islam in Medina, learning Islam in Mecca. You can always specialize in Islam outside of the holy cities, but learning it from the Muslim countries where you have the sources next to you, you have the best Imams next to you, you become a different person, a different breed of Imam. You know, sometimes we sit and we see there's 50 of us sitting down, and all of a sudden an Imam comes in, everybody gets up, kisses his hand. Why? He doesn't have Oxford degree, doesn't have Harvard degree. Why? Because of the status that he received from the seminary, from the madaris. That's why. That's the difference.
Imam, how can we confront the unqualified people assuming the rule of Imam in mosque in Western cities?
Imam training programs for Imams.
Can you elaborate more?
The Islamic seminaries in the Middle East need to appoint deputies in the West, in Canada, in America, Australia, UK, and say whoever graduates from these programs, courses, lessons, is considered certified from the seminary by extension. The main muftis and the main leaders of the seminaries, the madaris, will travel to the West and ordain and give ijazah and certify the Imams and tell them, you are qualified, and so on. Otherwise, if anyone just shows up and has money to establish a mosque, then no one can distinguish between the good and the bad. Look, diversity is a very beautiful thing. Being a diverse religion, you know, we're not like the Catholic Church where it's a hierarchy. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because there's freedom of thought, of critical thinking. There's nothing closed about Islam. It's open. And when you have an open religion, it means it's a confident religion. It's not afraid of your questions. But also you need organization. Because if anyone can make a madhab like ISIS, anyone can come forward, then you're going to have a problem where there's a fatwa that says you can do this to the Christians and the Jews, and you have 1,000 fatwas that say you cannot. This is the issue. And they will both refer to the Quran. One will twist the Quran, but how does the Westerner know? So I think the real way forward is for a connection, a bridge between the East and the West in terms of scholarship.
And I think here education plays an important role, especially with the ilm al-hadith or Quran, because, people must understand from where to get the correct information or the correct explanation for hadith and Quran. And this is what ISIS, for example, they do. They take a chapter from Quran or a verse, but then they misinterpret the verse and then mislead people. Imam, I'd like to wrap up this episode with one final question, if you don't mind. What is your message for the youth and the upcoming generation?
There are two ways to live your life. Two ways. You can live it in a way that pleases everyone in front of you and be the real celebrity. Everywhere you go, people will like you and have zero principles. In Iraq, they say like tomatoes. A tomato is present in every table. Whenever there's food, there's tomato.
Yeah.
So you either live your life like a tomato or you live your life with real principle. You sacrifice everything for the truth. Because to get to the truth and to stand by the truth is a challenge that many people love to hear about, love to relate with. We all love the truth, but come defend it. The sacrifice for the truth is always worth it. This is a principle I live by. The truth is worth it. It's worth having enemies for. It's worth people hating you. It's worth losing money over it. It's worth losing positions over it. It's worth people calling you controversial. It's worth it all. Because what you gain is the truth. If you genuinely and honestly believe in something, then anything else that you sacrifice for that truth is worth the sacrifice. And believe me, there are people, because I don't want to talk about myself, but there are people who have sacrificed families. They sacrifice a marriage. They sacrifice owning a home. They sacrifice a lifestyle. And they feel like a refugee. You have to start from zero. Why? Because you sacrificed for what you believed in. And this is something we all agree with, we all stand by, but when the test comes, not many are willing to go ahead. So these are the two ways of living. And I have always tried my best to stand with the truth. And if I ever feel that I have made an unwise decision, I go back and I correct it. And this is where people say, oh, so you change your opinion. No. There's not a change of opinions.
Exactly.
I'm correcting my path. Because as you grow, you become more knowledgeable, more aware.
Yeah.
This can go on forever. But in reality, that's my message. The truth is worth the sacrifice.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for youth? I always believe media and social media nowadays. How can we deal with it?
My view is that the biggest challenge for youth has not yet been addressed. And this is what I think it is. I think, and I'm talking specifically about Muslim youth.
Yeah.
I think that the Muslim youth believe that there is something always better on the other side. That if a Western professor says something, then that must be right. We should quote him 100 times. If, for example, someone says something good about the Prophet, peace be upon him, we say, wow, let's quote that everywhere. The Prophet is not great because this person said something good about him.
Yeah.
No, this person is showing us that he has reached the truth by understanding the reality of the Prophet. The idea that the other are always better than us, and that when we say progress and moving forward, it means we want to be like X country, we want to be like such a country. No need for that. Who said that what's better than us is out there? Have you seen it? The opposite is true. You find many are moving from the West, coming to the Middle East. Why? Because there's no crime problem. the issues that have destroyed family in the West.
Yes.
We don't have that problem in the Middle East. So I think, to wrap it up, have faith in your country, in your religion, in your people, and not everything you see is real. Not everything you see is real.
Well, Imam, thank you very much for being part of this insightful episode of Trending Echoes. It was such a fruitful conversation, and I'd like to thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Pleasure having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imam.